Thank you, everyone. My name is Will Lowry, he, him, his. I'm an associate professor of theater at Lehigh University, that's in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, on the traditional lands of the Lenni Lenape people. I'm a theater professor. I'm a lighting designer. I'm actually a multidisciplinary designer. I do set design, costume design, lighting design, and media design for the theater. I'm a theater maker. I'm a creative partner with Flux Theatre Ensemble in New York City. But at Lehigh, my role is primarily as a lighting designer, but I also teach other survey courses, and this is something that came up with that. Before I dive in, because I am a lighting designer, I want to say thank you to Tech for supporting all of this back there. A lot of crucial invisible labor that is appreciated. So some of my experience in terms of narrative interactivity, I've also done experience designs and production designs for some immersive theatrical events in DC. During the pandemic, I created a virtual experience called GPS that we did through Lehigh of live performance that was kind of escape room, plus Sleep No More, plus Choose Your Own Adventure. My theater company, Flux Theatre Ensemble, I say my, that's just because it's easier than saying our, but it's a non-hierarchical theater company. Our theater company created Our Options Have Changed, which is a audio telephone experience that's still running, no financial transaction to take part, that presents as a wellness menu, but the more you engage with it, the more you might find back voicemails, and someone trying to tempt the listener with puzzles, or even a faction trying to bring it all down from the inside. So theater has pervaded with this, and in the classroom I've started using more games that involve embodied narrative, and this is one of them. I've taught a Geek Theatre first year seminar several times looking at speculative drama as sort of lens for engaging with all the different disciplines, and with that we started using The Quiet Year. I also use For the Queen is another great one for that. Because the challenge here is, how do you manifest inspiration for creativity on a deadline? Right? Theater is you have opening night, it's got to open. As a designer, how do you get that inspiration fast to be creative? Because the show's got to open, right? We can't just sit on it forever. So creating is scary and it's overwhelming. We're not alone on that though. Plenty of people have written about it. My students read Art is Fear, Steal Like an Artist, kind of centering these things hey, it's okay, it's a little scary. It's okay, we're going to take inspiration from other things. And so we're going to use Avery Alder's The Quiet Year as for this. So students, they hear, you're going to write a 5-minute play. And these students are not majors. They've never done anything like this. And they're like, no, we are not writing a play. It's yeah, you can. No, you can write a 5-minute play. That's not too hard. So why The Quiet Year? Because essentially, we do this, we add a little quiet year, and we suddenly have a play. And you may say, could anything do that? I mean, yes. But The Quiet Year is particularly good at doing this. And the reason is, no more scared of the blank page right there. They have a story to base on. A lot of things do that in particular. There's also this idea of you have investment in the story, right? They created this story so that it has meaning to them, rather than just being hey, go adapt this existing play, which I did for the first few years to less success, having them adapt The Seagull in a genre of their choosing. But The Quiet Year dovetails perfectly with playwriting in terms of what one contributes and what the other needs to add in as a result. So that's what's exciting for me. So in this session, I'm going to talk about the basics of dramaturgy for any that are not as into some of the theatrical lenses. I've been excited to see some of those in different presentations already this weekend. Basics of Quiet Year. I'm curious, have most people played The Quiet Year? We have some in here. Cool. Then I was I'm going to explain it no matter what, but some people may not be aware of it. I'll talk a little bit how I ran that game in particular, and then some reflections at the end of it, leaving some time for questions if I planned this all appropriately. So basics of dramaturgy. Dramaturgy, study of dramatic structure as a broad sense. And so I give students some lenses that we can talk about it, emphasizing that a lot of these lenses are really dead white man lenses, that are very Western, but it's hey, this is not the lens, it is a lens that we can use to talk about this, to give you a framework, and it's a pretty common lens as well. One, for instance, is Aristotle's Poetics. Aristotle writes about tragedy, primarily. We don't know what he had to say about comedy, we've lost that. And he talks about the components of tragedy. We've kind of expanded this to talk about theater. He talks about plot, what happens, right? Just what happens in the play. Is it complete? For tragedies, they also wants this sort of height to it, but that's fine. Character, who are the agents of change? Who are doing the things? Thought, what are the ideas of the piece? And we talk about, in theater, we talk about, this is theme. When we're talking about, like, what are the themes of the piece? It's not so much a character's thinking, I'm hungry, I'm going to go over to get a sandwich, but like, is it about justice? Is it about greatness? Is it fate or free will, right? Humanity versus machine. These things could be themes. We talk about diction, right? Because a lot of this with theater is about characters speaking on stage. So how characters speak really matters, right? Not just like how they might speak conversationally versus something else, but are they using methods of like meter, rhyme, are people interrupting one another? Are they full thoughts? Diction matters. Spectacle, that's really my area. Aristotle poo-poos this, but he was Greek. He didn't understand really design was a field because they didn't really have that, 2 millennia ago. So he's like, it's the least important. Not true, I believe. And I will fight Aristotle to the death on that, and it looks like I won. So, spectacle is what you see, right? Spectacle, spectate, the visuals. We could say scenery, costume, lighting, media. And then there's melody, what you hear, right? Song, and also sound design, something else he was not aware of at the time. So this is our lens to talk about all the sort of plays we read and see during the term, because it just kind of covers all the areas we might want to talk about, right? We don't need to place them in an importance, Aristotle, but we can look at it in terms of like, hey, how are we doing all these things? Also, Freytag's pyramid. If you saw Trent Hergenrotter's refracting Freytag's pyramid, I think in here yesterday I was talking a bit about this, maybe it was in one of the other ones. It's another dramatic structure we can use to talk about like, okay, we start off with an exposition, these known things. We have this sort of rising action of things that are happening. Eventually we get down to this falling action and the resolution. With the key point we often talk about being the climax, this turning point. And something I do in theater classes though is we try to say like, well, we're reading a play, and then they have to interpret it. So we're not seeing a movie, sometimes we are seeing the production, right? But if we're reading a play, you get to choose where the climax is and articulate it. And where you feel that climax is may be different from somewhere else. So a big exercise we have is, where is this turning point? In particular, Aristotle talks about the peripeteia, this moment of reversal or recognition. And it can be very exciting theoretically to think of it. It might be earlier than you think. One example I give, in Hamlet, you can say, like, yeah, it's the final duel, the swords are poison tipped, will he survive? Or is the climax when Hamlet stabs through the curtain, kills poor Polonius, and it's like, you've killed someone, you weren't thinking, you were doomed. There's still a lot of story left. There's a lot of action beats. Will Gertrude repay for what she's done? Will Creon? Creon. Why I feel like I'm mixing it with Oedipus Rex. But like, is there a pivotal choice that sends you on this descent of high action still? And we think of it like, oh, now it's kind of going down. But think of it like a roller coaster. Some of the exciting part is right after you crest it, right? All of this is inevitable, but that's also the exciting part. So we think about that too when we look at the pyramid. And we also look at Konstantin Stanislavski's method of physical action. This is the father of psychological realism in acting. Okay, Moscow art theater, late 19th century, comes along around the same time as psychology. And we say physical action because he's talking about embodied action, right? That, what you're trying to do is like, you're trying to persuade, right? Or you're trying to like, barricade. They're action verbs about what a character is doing. And then when you live that life on stage, the subtext manifests. And so what he's looking at is that characters have a super objective, this infinitive, like to blank, like to rule, right? To love, to nurture, it can be anything. These are hard to define, especially reducing it to a single infinitive. But that everything they do, everything they're trying to accomplish falls under this ultimate super objective, right? So if it's like, well, they want to succeed in this aspect, are they trying to succeed because it's a way for them to get power? Are they trying to succeed because it's a way that they can take care of their family, right? So the objective might be like, I need to accomplish this particular task, but it has that layer of the super objective. So they have tactics to accomplish this, right? Well, if I want to succeed at this, well, I need to like go get these items, but oh no, the store's closed. We get obstacles. And so a lot of tension of what we get is a character trying to achieve something in alignment with their super objective, meeting an obstacle and making a new tactic. We see this all the time in like board games and stuff, right? You have objectives, right? You have tactics, and then someone like gets that stupid one train spot and Ticket to Ride, and suddenly you have to have a new tactic to go all the way around just to get to Duluth or whatever it is. So similarly with acting, how are you constantly trying to accomplish something? And so we end up using these lenses here because when we get down to playwriting, we're talking about characters making choices, right? When they encounter these obstacles, they have to make a choice. What are they going to do next? And choice drives a lot of Western narrative in that way. And our tools in playwriting are dialogue and action. What are they doing? What are they saying? All right, so with that little background, we can look then, all right, we have The Quiet Year. So we have our dramaturgical framework. Quiet Year, stunning game by Avery, Alder. It can be gotten at buriedwithoutceremony.com. Highly recommend this game. The Quiet Year, I'm going to just read what's up here, is a map game. You define the struggles of a post-apocalyptic community and attempt to build something good within their quiet year. Every decision and every action is set against a backdrop of dwindling time and rising concern. So within this particular game, some basics. Your community has been traveling. They have found a place to call home, right? Every round you play is a single week of the year. Each round you're going to draw a card and answer a prompt. You have a choice between two prompts really on there. Then you can take an action to discover something on this map, discuss something with the community, or address an element of particular importance by starting a project. And at the end of the year, the Frost Shepherds arrive. So you as a player know they only have 1 year. The community does not know this, but you as a player have separate knowledge, and the Frost Shepherds will arrive. Every element of this is recorded on a shared map. So it has this living document that is created as a result. And so like in class, these are some of the ones that might manifest from that, where the students are going, you don't have to be able to draw, but you just, every single thing gets put on the map somewhere to document what's happening to this community, right? So what's important here is you don't play as a person. You are all forces within the community telling this story collaboratively. Like you might say like, oh, this character rises, this sort of like, this figure Victoria comes up and Victoria is gonna actually like take charge of the community because there's this illness spreading, but someone else can say what Victoria does the next round. No one is Victoria in this, right? You're just forces within the community and you're being collaborative in this storytelling. So here's how they then mesh, right? So we have this, we have Aristotle again, plot, character, thought, diction, spectacle, melody. Well, the Quiet Year gives us our plot. We've traced out this entire year. Here's all of these things that happened during the year in this community. We have all that. Cool. Great. And we have spectacle because we have this map. We understand the world that exists. We understand like what it's like, how they live, what are the dangers that are around, what are some of the traditions that are around that. We might get a little sense of some of the main players, like who the characters kind of loosely are. It's a shallow level, but that's okay. And we have some idea of theming, looking back on it. But then when we start thinking about playwriting this, well, that's where our diction comes in, right? Quiet Year doesn't cover any of this. Really, you're not really embodying any characters. So you're not, the students particularly, with the time frame I give them, like you could opt into that. The game is flexible enough, but the students are not ever really embodying what a character says. So the play can do this. And the play can give these characters depth and motivations. And the play can focus the theme to something specific. We're not going to worry about melodies. So melodies, just don't worry about that. And when we look at Freytag's pyramid in particular, you know, the Quiet Year experience isn't actually really like this abstraction. It's much more like this, right? It's like this happened, and then this happened. Oh, we found a bottomless pit. Oh, the wolves are back again. Hey, look, a new crop just made magic berries, right? It's all of these little points of through time. But if we take one, if we say like, hey, this is our turning point, if this is our thing, we can focus in on just one area, and then we can make the play that connects those dots. Right? And because we've done the fullness of the whole thing, we actually then have the exposition and the denouement as well. We know where it's going to go. We know where it came from, and we can draw upon those, even focusing in on that one element here. And so this is part of the strength of that. So it provides a structure that we can build these story beats through the playing of the game, so students focus on character specificity. Who are these people, these agents of action? The dialogue and diction of the characters. How are they talking and expressing themselves? Pacing and flow within a 5-minute scene. How do you actually make this action manifest on stage? How is it on stage? Is it stageable? So many students want to make it like 3 different scenes. And it's like, it's 5 minutes. We're not like, you can't change all these scenes that fast. And this revelation of action. How does this pivotal moment happen and seem like, well, yeah, it was leading all up to this. I also like it's how the world shapes the characters, again, as a designer, because living in this this world that they've defined through the map really defines what's going on. And because it's a geek theater class, it's inherently dystopian, and we can start getting into sort of like genre thing. Like when we do imaginative, speculative drama, you have to make an agreement with your audience. Where you're like, yep, this character flies. We're not doing it on stage. We don't have that budget, right? So much more with geek theater, you're having to imagine, yes, this person is an AI. Yes, this person has superpowers. Yes, this is a spaceship 3,000 years in the future, even though you can see none of it. The audience has to do that, and you have a tighter bond in your willing suspension of disbelief. And so like it fosters that I get excited about in terms of geek theater. And so when we have choice, Quiet Year gives us that little period at the end. Here's what happened, and the play gives us everything that leads up to the end of that sentence, right? That's what's really exciting about the combination. So how am I actually doing this in class? Well, the basic format and prep of this, I divide the students into groups of 3 or 4. This is spread over several class periods. I've been able to do it in 2, but often I start like halfway through one class period and then may like stagger it over a few. I provide them with some starter maps. I'm trying to accelerate some portions of this as well. They get some index cards for notes. They get some dice that they usually play with throughout. That's cool. We all play with dice. You know, we have those that play D&D and like stacking our little dice towers. Guilty. They get little tokens as well as they might need them. I put all the prompts in a slide deck so they can see it at one time. And then I actually build a music playlist with an arc. So, melody came back, right? So in Spotify, I have a spring, summer, autumn, winter playlist that starts off and it's like all like lighter acoustic stuff. And it's all like video game music and like instrumental stuff. And by winter, it's like a lot heavier stuff because the prompts get a lot heavier too. So I'm subconsciously shaping their perception of the gameplay through that, even though that doesn't manifest in the plays themselves. So like this might be the type of maps I give them, right? I want to give them, I call them, you're going to come up and you're going to have maps like the island, the gorge, the coast. And then they kind of come up in, they send a representative up, they grab a map. I have more maps than groups, right? So that no one's stuck with the last one. There's always some manner of choice there, but it gets them started. And they add a few things to the map to start with, but having them not have to draw the location accelerates this for a class. And this is kind of what the slide decks look like. You know, I do put a little, you can run it with a deck of cards, which Avery talks about in the PDF version as well. There's 2 prompts on it, so this is a spring prompt right here. And then I even like color code the backgrounds faintly, which is not as visible on here, so it does shift from like this light pale green into a little like soft sunflower yellow into something more like rosy into something cooler for winter. Again, I'm a designer, so I want to shape the experience where possible. During play, they have this other mechanic called abundances and scarcity. At the very beginning, you say, hey, everybody pick something that's important. And after everyone in the group picks something that's important, you're like, cool, one is in abundance, the rest are in scarcity. So like that's a hard choice to begin with, right? And then I give them an additional scarcity as well, because what I'm looking for in this is I'll say like, choose one of these: technology, magic, blood, art, or sunlight. And I'm partly doing this so just in case they chose like, less meaty ones, but also like when I say like magic, I want them to think like you're free of realism, right? You have options to expand. Hopefully Frost Shepherd's magic kind of hint this to them. I do a shorter version of 36 weeks that Avery Alder talks about, so we just do 9 cards per season with that. Only 2 to 3 minutes per round. You can play this game a lot longer. The Adventure Zone actually recently, or maybe last year, did a version of the Quiet Year to build one of their campaigns, and they played it for like 8 hours. I played versions that are 3 or 4 hours. I have found I can set a timer for 2.5 minutes, and while some groups have to wrap up quickly, others it's enough. And for what I'm looking for with like these single points of story building, it works perfectly for that. So I can keep it moving quickly. There's also this inexorable quality of having a timer to it because the year's progressing, right? Whereas if you're just with friends, like you can really belabor the moment. I allow them to draw the cards, little tiny touches like, yep, draw the card face down, right? Because they feel they have agency, and they do have agency, so I don't control which prompts go up. And at the end, we do some reflections. And these are important for how we turn this into a play, because here's what we're going to do. The collaborative part is over. They sit down. What happens when the Frost Shepherds arrive? You don't have to be in alignment with the group anymore. It's your own interpretation. And then what are just some memorable moments? 3 memorable moments. Because we're not going to have time to get started probably at this class period. We usually try to have some sort of reflection on the play process in terms of creating a narrative collaboratively. But these index cards right afterwards are very useful so that we can go back and say, like, let's take one of these moments and a central choice where everything changed in that moment. So once we have that moment, we do some exercises. One is Naomi Azuka's swimming exercise. This is a playwriting exercise of 5, 10, 15 minutes, where the whole goal is you write without stopping from a character's point of view. Now that sounds really hard, right? But it's swimming, so if you don't know what to say, you just write, what I really mean to say is, what I really mean to say is, what I really mean to say is, treading water until you find what you really mean to say. And so it's an exercise to keep saying you can tread water or you can swim forward, but you write from a character's point of view for 5 minutes. So this starts getting them into a character. They build a timeline of action that's built off of what they did in the quiet year. They then decide, okay, given the action, what are each character's goals? And what are their obstacles stopping them? Getting back into that Stanislavski method of physical action. What does each character want? What are they trying to accomplish? Not all will succeed, sometimes none do. How does each character speak? Right? If they decide this beforehand, this character is like very eloquent, uses huge words, and they use these words to assert power on others, right? That then informs when they begin to write it. I give them a description about the immediate environment of this action, so they're not just saying like, on a spaceship, right? But they say like, this was the bunker by the greenhouse that failed, right? Where you can still smell the crops that were left over. That gives you something to draw on that enriches it. And then they do a little concept statement on the theme, that what they believe and their intentions, because still ultimately not everyone has the same writing ability. So one thing I can look at is like, what are you trying to do, right? And seeing how that aligns with self-awareness. And then you'll note, hey, look, we have most of Aristotle's here. Melody, no, right? But we have plot, we have character, we have diction, we have the sense of spectacle, we have the sense of theming. We've used this lens here, and like, great, here's how it applies to something you are creating within this. And then these are early deliverables. So this is something that takes several weeks. They turn these in earlier, then they start moving on to their draft. So they have those decided, and they just make the draft that kind of fleshes that all out. The other thing he emphasized is something called the neoclassical unity. So this is something we talk about in theater. So, the Aristotle and the Greeks write about theater. The Romans then take it and they adapt it and then add more sex and violence into it. And then they all go away for a millennium. And then the Italians, find all this stuff and like, wow, look at all this stuff. This is brilliant stuff. Everything should be like this, but we're just going to talk about it and not do it. And then the French neoclassical period takes the Italian writings. They're like, we have found the one true truth. Right? So it has been passed down, and these are not the one truth, but they're very useful for a 5-minute play. And that's the unity of time. It all occurs at one place, right? Keep it simple. It doesn't need to keep jumping week after week. It's 5 minutes. So they really, like The Tempest, if you think about Shakespeare's The Tempest, it occurs over 4 hours. Ariel says early in it, the sand, I think they're talking about like sand timer is like 2 past the afternoon, or the sun is 2 past the afternoon. By 6, our affairs will be over. Right? It occurs in one time span. Unity of place, it occurs in one location. This also helps simplify, like focus on one location. Why does everything need to happen in this one room, in this one place outside? And unity of action, what is the central choice it's about? So this is very good about focusing and manufacturing stage ability. So how ultimately does this work with this? So we have, there are some admitted drawbacks. There's no easy backup. No easy backup if a student misses playtime. I don't have a solution for this. It's just what happens when we're running it in class. I think I'm going to be trying it in the fall, starting it in class, and then having them continue on their own. If you miss that first class, it's a problem. You do acquiesce to the gods of chaos in terms of tone. So, some people want something more serious. One, they had discovered Pokemon Island. It is copyright infringement left and right, but it's like, that's fine. It's staying in this class. And if you're just discovering Pokemon all over the place, as long as it's adding dramatic tension, okay. So you could get a bit of chaos within that. I've been fortunate enough that groups have largely, by putting them with people that they're already collaborating with, that they're kind of aligning with that, and I haven't had to face where like people really had a schism based on the tone they preferred. It is impossible for me to know what's going on simultaneously. So if that's something that's of interest while they're playing to understand all the stories, it's not possible at all. So I'm just like making sure they're talking and making choices, and I can often tell by a flip a prompt and I hear, because they find out someone has to die or something. I'm like, cool, they're in it. They're doing something. I don't know what they're doing, but like as long as they're still in it. And it has required like 2+ class periods, which is like 2% of the term. I teach 2 times a week for 75 minutes. So that's a chunk, but again, I think it's worth it. The advantage is this is exceptional getting past a blank page of paper. They have a story, they've done it. They've done it for fun even. So like, that's amazing. Students feel ownership in this story as well, right? Because they created it, so now they care about what they're telling. Like, they know their characters more than I do. It leans into speculative drama, which I like being a Geek Theatre class. I can run this simultaneously for a whole class. I've also run this for a virology class, modifying the prompts for 32 students in parallel, because they can just, it's technically GM-less. I'm just running the slides. I'm not actually doing anything story. I'm just more like, I'm stage managing it. It's a collaborative foundation, which is a theater practitioner I love, for individual work. And then their plays fill in these conscious gaps that are within the quiet year. So this works perfectly for this. So this is how within this, So this is how the magic, we take a student, we have a little bit of quiet year, we get to this final play. They're excited about using embodied narrative in the classroom as a manifestation of theater, because I also think this is a form of theater, very expansive in my definition of theater. It works perfectly as a playwriting project. It overcomes this fear of creation. At the end, they're like, oh my gosh, I wrote an original 5-minute play. And it's like, yeah, you did, right? You had the power all along. It emphasizes community and collaboration, things that are important to me as well. And Avery Alder is amazing, so I want to highlight her. I also want to highlight one more model. My colleague Chris Gilly-Forer, so I started doing this in 2021. He's at Western Kentucky, and he's doing the same with the class of BFA majors, and we've been comparing notes. So he's doing with actors, playwrights, designers, and directors, where they are playing it, and then the playwrights are going and creating, and they're doing like 10-minute, fully produced, acted, off-book design pieces of theater as well. So it's been fascinating comparing notes of what happens when it's people who are theater experienced creating this sort of thing, and then my area was like people who know nothing about theater are becoming playwrights because they have this game here. So like it's been very fun kind of comparing the lessons learned from each of us right there. Oh, and the Frost Shepherds have arrived. So the presentation is over, but in the last couple minutes, I can have if there's any questions.